The diner door exploded inward, the force enough to detonate the antiquated cowbell above, sending shards of ceramic and twisted metal scattering. A small girl, no older than 7, stumbled across the threshold, her bare feet crunching on the broken glass. A tattered yellow sundress, ripped at the shoulder and stained with grime, hung loosely on her frame. Her breath hitched in desperate, shallow gulps, her eyes too wide, too knowing for a child, reflecting a terror that seemed to seep from her very bones. "Please," she rasped, her voice barely audible above the hum of the diner's ancient refrigerator, then louder, laced with rising hysteria. "Please, someone, he's coming." The lunch rush had evaporated like morning mist, leaving only a handful of souls lingering in the roadside haven off Route 9. Betty, a woman whose life was etched in the lines around her eyes and the stubborn set of her jaw, mechanically wiped down the speckled Formica tables. 2 truckers, their faces creased with fatigue and the endless miles behind them, nursed their 3rd cups of lukewarm coffee. And in the corner booth, 3 figures draped in worn leather, the unmistakable uniform of the Iron Riders MC, sat in quiet repose. The world seemed to hold its breath. Spoons clattered to plates, conversations died in their throats, the clatter of Betty's rags ceased. At the head of the biker trio, a man known only as Hawk slowly lowered his fork. His face, a roadmap of sun, wind, and unforgiving asphalt, held the stoic calm of a seasoned gunslinger. Eyes, the color of a stormy sea, remained sharp and unwavering despite the weight of 50-odd years of hard living. Beside him, Jonesy, a mountain of a man built like a brick shithouse, sported a grizzled beard that cascaded down his chest like a tangled waterfall. The third, a younger man named Cruz, bore the faded white scars on his forearm, a painful reminder of a near-fatal wreck 2 years prior. The girl's panicked gaze darted across the room, assessing each face, each potential threat, each possible savior. Then her eyes locked onto the bikers. A flicker of something shifted within her expression. Not relief, not exactly, but a spark of recognition, as if she had finally found the beacon she was desperately searching for. "Miss," Betty began, her voice laced with concern as she moved toward the girl. "Are you?" The girl shook her head with a violent intensity that belied her small stature. "He's coming right now, please." Hawk rose, the legs of his chair screeching against the worn linoleum floor. His voice, a low rumble honed by years of commanding respect, cut through the rising tension, its calmness a lifeline in the swirling storm of fear. "Who's coming?" "Mr. Garrett?" she choked out, her voice breaking like thin ice. He said nobody would believe me, that I'm just making things up." The diner door swung open again, revealing a man who exuded an aura of calculated normalcy. He wore impeccably pressed khakis, a pristine polo shirt, the uniform of casual respectability. His smile was a practiced, apologetic curve, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, the gold band on his finger catching the harsh fluorescent light. "There you are, Emma," he said, the relief in his voice thick as honey. "Sweetheart, you had me so worried." The girl, Emma, recoiled, pressing herself against the greasy countertop, shaking her head with frantic desperation. "No, no, no, no." The man's gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on each occupant before settling on Betty. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance. My daughter gets confused sometimes. She has episodes." Hawk remained motionless, yet his presence seemed to swell, filling the space like an encroaching shadow. "That right?" The man, Garrett, turned toward him, extending a hand in a gesture of practiced affability. "Richard Garrett. I'm a counselor at Riverside Elementary. Emma's been under my care at the school. She has some behavioral issues. Poor thing. Runs off when she gets overwhelmed." Nobody reached out to shake his hand. Jonesy shifted in the booth, the springs of the ancient furniture groaning under his immense weight, his eyes suddenly alert and predatory. Cruz's fingers drummed a single, staccato rhythm against the tabletop, then fell still, poised and ready. Emma's voice, barely a whisper, somehow carried through the oppressive silence. He's lying. Garrett's smile tightened, a flicker of irritation betraying his carefully constructed facade. Emma, please. We've talked about this. Making up stories doesn't help anyone. Betty looked from the man to the girl, her face a canvas of uncertainty. Sir, maybe we should call the school. Emma spoke suddenly, urgently. Call Principal Davies. She knows me. She knows I don't lie. Garrett chuckled, but the sound rang hollow, devoid of genuine humor. Of course, though the school day ended hours ago. Principal Davies has likely gone home by now. He took a step forward, his hand outstretched. Come on, sweetheart. Your parents are worried sick. My parents are in Seattle, Emma said, her voice gaining strength, a newfound steel in her tone. At my grandma's funeral. That's why you picked today. The air in the diner shifted, a subtle yet palpable change. Hawk's eyes narrowed, his gaze boring into Garrett. Picked today for what? Garrett's smile remained plastered on his face, unwavering and unsettling. Look, I appreciate your concern, but this is a family matter. I'm not his family, Emma interrupted, her voice trembling but resolute. I'm not anyone's family right now. That's the whole point. She looked at Hawk, her eyes pleading, her next words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He's been watching me all year, since my parents started working late. He offers to drive kids home, takes the ones nobody's watching. Her voice cracked, raw with unshed tears. He took Sarah Martinez 3 weeks ago. She didn't come back to school. Everyone said she moved, but she didn't. I saw her backpack in his car. The temperature in the room plummeted, as if a sudden Arctic blast had swept through the open doorway. Garrett's expression flickered, the mask momentarily slipping, revealing the cold, calculating predator beneath. Then it snapped back into place, the facade of concerned respectability restored. This is ridiculous. Emma, you're getting yourself into serious trouble with these accusations. Cruz stood, effectively blocking the door, his posture not overtly threatening, but undeniably firm. Jonesy rose too, his massive frame casting a long, ominous shadow, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. Seems like the kid's pretty specific for someone who's just confused. Garrett's jaw tightened, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. I don't appreciate what you're insinuating. I'm a respected educator. I've worked with troubled children for 15 years. Then you won't mind us calling that principal, Hawk said, his voice dangerously soft. What was the name? Davies. Since it's after hours, we'll call her Cell. Hawk's voice remained calm, yet his hand had moved subtly to his belt, not reaching for a weapon. He carried none, but assuming a position of coiled readiness. Betty, you got your phone? Betty was already fumbling for it behind the counter, her hands trembling slightly. What's the school's name, honey? Riverside Elementary, Emma said, her voice laced with urgency. Please hurry. Garrett's composure crumbled further, revealing the panic lurking beneath the surface. This is harassment. I could have you all arrested for interfering with a guardian's rights. Guardian? Cruz spoke for the first time, his accent, a subtle blend of Cuban warmth and American grit, cutting through the tension. Thought you said you were a counselor. Those are different things. The man's eyes darted between the 3 bikers, rapidly calculating odds, weighing risks. His hand moved subtly toward his pocket. Hawk moved faster, his actions precise and economical, designed to neutralize without escalating. His hand shot out, intercepting Garrett's wrist in a steel grip. Let's keep our hands where everyone can see them. Garrett tried to wrench free, his face contorted with anger. Get your hands off me. This is assault. Jonesy was there suddenly, a towering wall of muscle and menace, shrinking the space around Garrett, suffocating him with unspoken threat. Funny thing is, you haven't shown any ID. Haven't proven who you are. Kid says she's not yours. Seems like we got ourselves a situation. Betty's voice, strained but determined, crackled from behind the counter. Hello? Yes, I'm looking for Principal Davies. It's urgent. It's about one of your students, Emma. She paused, listening intently, her face paling with each passing second. She is... Since when? Another pause. I see. Yes. Yes, I'll hold. Emma's voice was barely audible, a thread of sound in the suffocating silence. What did she say? Betty covered the receiver with a trembling hand. Principal Davies filed a missing child report this morning when Emma didn't show up for school, and they couldn't reach her parents. They called the emergency contact. The counselor, Mr. Garrett, said he'd drive by her house to check on her. The room went deathly silent, the implications of Betty's words hanging heavy in the air. Garrett's expression underwent a grotesque transformation. The practiced warmth evaporated, replaced by something colder, harder, predatory. You people have no idea what you're doing. Pretty sure we do, Hawk said quietly, his grip on Garrett's wrist tightening imperceptibly. Betty, tell the principal to call the police. Tell them we've got Emma and she's safe. Tell them to hurry. Already doing it. Betty's voice shook, but her hand remained steady as she relayed the information. Garrett smiled then, and it was nothing like the practiced, apologetic curve he had displayed earlier. This smile was cruel, empty, a glimpse into the abyss. You think this matters? Think one little girl's word against mine means anything? I'm a pillar of this community. I counsel children. I sit on the school board. And you? He looked at the bikers with open disdain. You're nobody. Criminals, probably. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? Hawk's voice dropped lower, colder, laced with a barely suppressed fury. Don't need them to believe me. Need them to believe her. And need them to look close enough to find what you've been hiding. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes, fear, perhaps, or a frantic calculation. Emma spoke again, her voice small but clear, cutting through the man's arrogance. He has a storage unit. Number 42. At the facility by the highway. He doesn't know I saw the key. It fell out of his pocket during art class. I memorized the number because... Her voice broke, choked with sobs. Because Sarah used to be my friend. The confession hung in the air like a shroud. One of the truckers moved suddenly, pushing his forgotten coffee aside with a clatter. I'm blocking the parking lot. Ain't nobody leaving till the cops show. The second trucker nodded in grim agreement. I'll help. Garrett lunged then, surprising them with the suddenness and ferocity of his attack. He broke free of Hawk's grip, shoving Emma backward with brutal force. She stumbled, hitting the counter hard, but Cruz was there, his reflexes honed by years of riding and brawling, catching her before she fell. Garrett sprinted for the door, desperation etched on his face. He made it 3 steps before Jonas's massive arm slammed across his chest in a brutal clothesline. The man went down hard, the air whooshing from his lungs in a strangled gasp. Hawk was on him immediately, pinning him to the floor with a knee in his back, his arms twisted behind him in a painful lock. Don't move, Hawk said, his voice devoid of anger, just cold, implacable certainty. Garrett thrashed and shouted, his voice laced with panicked fury. This is assault. I'll sue every one of you. You have no right or wrong, Jonesy rumbled, his voice a low growl of righteous indignation. You ain't going nowhere. Betty's voice cut through the chaos. Police are 2 minutes out. They're sending multiple units. Emma stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock, Cruz's hand still steadying her shoulder. Tears finally came, silent and unstoppable, streaming down her face, not from fear now, but from something breaking loose inside, a dam finally bursting. You did good, kid, Cruz said quietly, his voice rough but kind. Real good. He said nobody would believe me, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He said I was nobody, that my parents left me so it didn't matter. Hawk looked back at her, his eyes softening slightly. You were wrong about one thing. Emma blinked at him through her tears, confused. You said you're not anyone's family right now. His voice softened just slightly, a rare display of vulnerability. Road takes care of its own. Has since before you were born. You ran to us for help. That makes you ours to protect. Nobody touches you while we're breathing. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. Garrett had gone still, his face pressed against the greasy linoleum floor, his breathing ragged. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, a defeated whisper. "You don't understand. There are others, people who will. Then they can come find us," Jonesy said, his tone carrying no bravado, just a simple statement of fact. "We'll be waiting." The police arrived in a storm of flashing lights and blaring sirens. For patrol cars, 2 unmarked detective units, officers flooding the diner with procedures and questions. But through it all, the bikers stayed close to Emma, forming a protective circle around her. Not speaking for her, not interfering with the investigation, just present. A wall of leather and steel between a scared child and a world that had failed her. If you believe in the power of observation, in trusting your instincts, and in the courage it takes to speak up when something feels wrong, then pause for a moment, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biker Path. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Detective Sarah Morrison took Emma's statement with gentle professionalism, her years on the force allowing her to extract the truth without further traumatizing the child. Emma's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the details pouring out, a torrent of suppressed fear and desperation that she had held inside for months. The way Garrett had subtly isolated certain students, how he had volunteered for after-school programs, offered rides, building trust under the guise of mentorship. How he'd manipulated her, making her feel like speaking up would only cause trouble, that adults never believed kids like her. "Sarah Martinez," Emma said again, her voice insistent, pleading. "Storage Unit 42. Please, you have to check. She might still." Morrison nodded, her expression grim, already speaking into her radio. "We're sending units now." An hour later, when they found the storage unit and broke the flimsy padlock, they discovered more than they had prepared for. Not just evidence, but Sarah Martinez, alive, though severely dehydrated and traumatized, but breathing, and documentation of others' names, locations, meticulously recorded details, a network of abuse that stretched beyond one man, beyond one town, a spiderweb of depravity. The scope of the crime was so vast, so horrifying, that news vans began to arrive by sunset, their satellite dishes piercing the twilight sky. Through it all, the bikers stayed, their presence a silent reassurance. They gave their statements, answered questions with patient stoicism, enduring the skeptical glances from some officers who saw the leather vests and made snap judgments, drawing lazy conclusions. But Morrison knew better. She'd been on the force long enough to understand that heroism didn't care about appearances, that courage could be found in the most unexpected places. When Emma's parents finally arrived, having caught the first flight back from Seattle, her mother collapsed to her knees in the diner parking lot, engulfing her daughter in an embrace so fierce it seemed she would never let go. Her father stood behind them, tears streaming down his face, unable to find the words to express the depth of his gratitude, his relief, his guilt. Emma pulled back just enough to point at the bikers, her small voice ringing with conviction. "They saved me. He was right there and they didn't let him take me." Her father approached Hawk, his hand outstretched, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, God. Thank you. If you hadn't." Hawk shook his hand once, firmly, his gaze unwavering. "Your daughter saved herself. She's the one who spoke up, who remembered the details, who was brave enough to run. We just stood in the way." Still, Emma's mother said, wiping her eyes, her voice trembling. "You stood when you could have looked away. You stood." Jonesy shifted uncomfortably, and used to such heartfelt gratitude. "What else were we going to do?" Cruz smiled slightly, a hint of pride in his eyes. "It's what we do. Road's got its own code." As the sun dipped below the horizon behind the diner, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and purple, Detective Morrison approached the bikers one more time. "The storage unit had evidence of 17 victims," she said quietly, her voice heavy with the weight of the discovery. 17. Some as far back as 5 years. Without Emma's testimony, without you keeping him here. She didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. The unspoken words hung in the air, a testament to the horror they had averted. Hawk nodded once, silent, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky. You know the defense attorney's going to try to paint you as the aggressors, Morrison continued, her expression grim. Garrett's already claiming intimidation, false imprisonment. Let him claim what he wants, Jonesy said, his voice unwavering. Truth is truth. Morrison smiled grimly. Yeah, it is. And we've got diner security footage that tells the whole story, plus testimony from 6 witnesses. He's done. The bikers mounted their motorcycles as darkness fell, the chrome gleaming under the harsh glare of the police floodlights. Emma stood with her parents, wrapped securely in her mother's arms, watching them prepare to leave. Wait, she called out, her voice clear and strong. They paused, their engines idling, a rumble of restrained power. She ran over, small and quick, and pressed something into Hawk's hand. A drawing, done on the back of a diner napkin, rendered in crayon with the painstaking detail only a child could possess. 3 motorcycles, 3 riders, silhouetted against a setting sun. And one small figure standing bravely between them and a looming shadow. The words scrawled above it in careful, uneven letters. Heroes. Hawk looked at it for a long moment, his weathered face softening, then carefully folded it and tucked it into his vest pocket, close to his heart. You keep being brave, Emma. World needs more people like you. Will I see you again? She asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. He smiled, the rare expression transforming his face, softening the harsh lines etched by the road. Road's long, kid. Crosses paths more than you'd think. The engines roared to life, a deep, primal sound that spoke of freedom and purpose in equal measure. As they pulled onto the highway, Cruz looked back once at the diner, now blazing with lights, still full of people and purpose and justice finally being served. You think she'll be okay? He asked over the comm, his voice tinged with concern. She spoke up when it mattered most, Hawk replied, his voice firm with conviction. That kind of strength doesn't just disappear. Yeah, she'll be okay. Jonesy rumbled his agreement, his voice a low, comforting vibration. Better than okay. Kids got fire. They rode into the night, 3 shadows against the darkening sky, their silhouettes fading into the vast expanse. No destination in mind, just following the endless white lines that stretched endlessly forward, guiding them into the unknown. Behind them, the diner grew smaller, receding into the distance, but the weight of what had happened there stayed with them, not as a burden, but as a purposeful reminder of their shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Bike Diaries. We bring you stories that prove heroism comes in all forms, that courage isn't measured by size or age, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever noticed something important that others missed? Your story might inspire someone else. Months later, Hawk received a letter. The postmark was local, the handwriting careful and deliberate, the script of a child who was just beginning to master the art of written communication. Inside, a photograph. Emma, standing between her parents at a community event, her face radiant with happiness and newfound confidence. She was holding an award, the principal's medal for courage, its gold surface gleaming in the sunlight. Her smile was real, reaching her eyes, the kind of unguarded, genuine expression that belonged to a kid who'd been given her childhood back. There was a note tucked behind the photo, written in the same careful hand. Dear Hawk, Jonesy, and Cruz. Asterisk because of what happened, they investigated the whole school district. They found 2 more people like Mr. Garrett. They're all going to prison for a really long time. Asterisk Detective Morrison said I helped save 23 kids by speaking up. Asterisk my parents got me a dog. Her name is Harley. Mom said I could pick any name I wanted. Asterisk thank you for standing when you could have sat. Thank you for listening when you could have ignored me. Thank you for believing me when he said nobody would. Asterisk I'm going to be brave every day just like you taught me. Asterisk your friend, Emma. Asterisk P.S. I'm learning to ride a bicycle. Maybe someday I'll get a motorcycle too. Hawk read the letter twice, his eyes tracing each carefully formed word, then passed it to Jonesy and Cruz. They sat in their usual booth at a different diner in a different town, on a different stretch of endless highway, the landscape blurring past the window in a constant, ever-changing panorama. But some things stayed constant: the strong, black coffee, the open road, the unwavering code that bound them together. "Kid's doing good," Cruz said, his voice soft with satisfaction, handing the letter back to Hawk. "Better than good," Jonesy agreed, his gaze distant, lost in his own thoughts. Hawk carefully refolded the letter and tucked it into his vest, right next to the worn napkin drawing, a tangible reminder of the lives they had touched. Road provided when she needed it. That's all that matters. Outside, their motorcycles waited, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun, their chrome gleaming like polished silver. The highway stretched in both directions, beckoning them onward, an endless ribbon of possibility. Endless miles, endless opportunities to make a difference. Somewhere along its length, someone else might need help. Someone else might be lost and afraid. Someone else might run to them, desperate for salvation. And when that moment came, they'd be ready, their resolve unwavering, their hearts open, because that's what the road did. It brought the lost to those who wouldn't turn away. It connected strangers in moments of crisis. It created families from nothing but need and courage, and the simple act of standing up for what was right. They paid their bill, left a generous tip for the weary waitress, and walked out into the sunlight, their shadows stretching long behind them. The engines roared to life, a symphony of controlled power and untamed freedom, a sound that spoke of adventure and responsibility in equal measure. As they pulled onto the highway, Hawk thought about Emma's last line, her hopeful dream of a future filled with open roads and endless possibilities. Maybe someday she would ride, feeling the wind in her hair, the sun on her face, the asphalt humming beneath her wheels. Maybe she'd find her own road, her own code, her own moments where standing up mattered more than staying safe. The thought made him smile, a genuine, heartfelt expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes and softened the lines of his weathered face. "Where to, boss?" Cruz asked over the comm, his voice crackling through the static. Hawk looked at the horizon, where the road met the sky in an endless, unbroken line. Forward, always forward. And so they rode, three riders against the vastness, their silhouettes shrinking against the boundless expanse of the American West, carrying with them the weight of one child's courage and the powerful reminder that heroism wasn't about size or strength or fearlessness. It was about showing up, about standing between the vulnerable and those who sought to do them harm, about believing the unbelievable and protecting the powerless. The road had no end, no final destination, no ultimate reward. But every mile mattered, every act of kindness, every moment of presence, of awareness, of willingness to act when action was needed. Those were the moments that changed lives, that saved lives, that made the world a little bit brighter, a little bit safer, a little bit more just. Emma had reminded them of that. A small girl with bare feet and a torn yellow dress running into a greasy diner with nothing but desperation and a fragile spark of hope. She'd chosen them, trusted them, believed they'd stand when she needed someone to stand, and they had. The miles stretched ahead, full of unknown tomorrows, uncertainties and challenges that lay hidden just beyond the horizon. But for now, in this moment, three riders moved through the world, carrying with them the unwavering proof that heroes came in all sizes, that courage could be found in the smallest hearts, and that sometimes the most important thing a person could do was simply refuse to look away. The road called, they answered, and somewhere behind them, a little girl named Emma was learning to be brave. Every single day, her spirit soaring, her future bright with promise. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you to trust your instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to never underestimate the power of paying attention, please share it. Subscribe to Bike Diaries for more stories that prove heroes are everywhere, that courage comes in all forms, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest impact. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Emma's place?